Hey, what's up guys? Gordon Briley here with PhenoX Fitness and Nutrition. Today's video is one that is really important to me. I love the science behind it, but I do feel like there's a lot of people that get into fasting or trying to figure it out, but don't really have the relevant information, don't care to seek it. But hopefully that's why you're here, you're looking to change that, and I want to educate you guys on it. I want to try to kind of stay surface level so we don't get too deep into it, bore you to death, and then you just tune me out anyways. But it is really important to me that you actually understand who should be fasting, how should you be fasting, how often, things like this. So with me planning on glancing over it, hopefully you guys just take the initiative to ask questions, and then we can further that conversation with your guys' questions and get into the nitty-gritty details. For now, we'll just talk about what is fasting, why is it relevant, and one of the reasons that I know that it's relevant, besides understanding it, is anything that grows in popularity generally is going to grow because of marketing. So there's a product to sell. The keto industry was the perfect example of that. Every single product under the sky, cookies, this, that, everything was keto. And not saying that keto isn't relevant or have some relevance to some people, but it was really driven, as hard as it was, because of marketing and people being able to sell stuff. Now, fasting, on the other hand, has become very popular and being used widely without the marketing industry behind it. So you know there's some genuineness to actually it working and being something that's good for your health. And that's what we're going to kind of get into. And the first thing that you have to understand about fasting is why do it in the first place. And what fasting is good for is when you do not eat, when you're not consuming anything besides water, you're without glucose. And glucose is really the problem when you have something called insulin resistance. So in your body, when you consume foods, whether it be carbohydrates, protein, or fat, they can all turn to glucose. Some are much less likely to. Carbs are going to be the most often. They're going to go right into glucose. They get to your system really quickly. And they go right to the cell, and the cell is supposed to bring them in and then put them in the mitochondria. So that's the powerhouse of the cell, and it's going to be utilized for energy. But what happens is if you're chronically eating too many carbohydrates, not exercising, they're going to get to the cell, and they're going to get to the cell in abundance. And like anything, if you're inundating something or overusing it or whatever it may be, however you want to explain it, it will start to become resistance in most cases, especially with your body. So glucose all the time, insulin is the storage hormone. It tells your body to store it, go to the cell. But it's no longer able to get into the cell because the cell becomes resistant to insulin. And that's the major problem. All of these diabetes, heart disease, so many of these, really, cancer is a big one. These are all things that are really relevant to you being insulin resistant, you not being able to get glucose into the cell anymore. And now your blood glucose rises out of control, so high blood sugar, and that's deteriorating tissue and cognitive function. And there's just a whole host of bodily injuries, whatever you want to call it, in the way of, you know, if it's not getting into the cell, it has to go somewhere. It's definitely going to go to the fat cells, and it goes to the liver and becomes fat or triglycerides, different things like that. And those are causing the heart disease. And we're not doing a good job of associating them until currently. And people are starting to understand that insulin resistance really truly is the main problem behind all of these different chronic diseases. So to me, fasting is truly more beneficial in the way of your general health, or what we call health span, or it's very relevant to lifespan. And it's relevant to lifespan because it's been proven over and over again in different types of models, animal models, human models, that if you calorie restrict that you will actually live longer. And what does that really mean? Why does that really matter in the grand scheme of things? To me, being a personal trainer and understanding the complexity of all the different things that are happening here, lifespan is really important. We want to live longer, but I also think quality of life is just as important. So making sure that you're feeding yourself appropriately for your lifestyle, your body type, stuff like that. We want to work on quality of life and lifespan, and that's how fasting has to be implemented in a way that's appropriate for your lifestyle and to get the benefit that you're actually looking for. With that being said, we should kind of get into who should and who shouldn't be fasting. And you'd be surprised, as healthy as fasting is for you, as good as it is for you, there is a large group of people that should not be fasting, or they should not be fasting yet. And if you're someone that's overweight, you're obese, you've been over-consuming energy, and you have become insulin resistant, glucose is no longer getting into the cell where it belongs to create energy, and that is a huge problem, which we've already gone over. So you're someone that needs to be without glucose. Give those cells an opportunity to become insulin sensitive, and they'll resensitize by not being constantly inundated with it. It will recover. So if you're diabetic, you can actually, if it's type 2, you can actually reverse that and get back to where your cells will take in glucose and you no longer suffer from high blood sugar, aka prediabetes or diabetes. So if you're overweight, obese, been over consuming, then you should get to fasting. You should absolutely do it. How long you do it, whether it's a long-term fast, 24, 48 hours, that's stuff that we can get into with your questions, and I'll try to, again, surface level it. But it is definitely more appropriate for someone that's been an overconsumer to get to fasting right away. Now, I think more relevant to a bigger part of the population is who shouldn't be fasting. And if you've watched any of my videos before, we talk about your RMR and how your RMR is affected in creating a calorie deficit for weight loss. And what happens is if you take these videos and the information within them, they're kind of built in a sequence to get you guys to understand that these are all interrelated and they all affect each other. But if you fix one often, insulin resistance, you're going to see improvements in all of them. So that's why we have to think about when we should be fasting and how we should be fasting if we're someone that shouldn't be fasting. And I'm going to go over that right now, is the person who is skinny fat. It's not my favorite term in the world, but that's a lot of people know it and kind of understand it. But if you have been someone that's not exercising and you have also been under eating, then you're likely someone who has little muscle mass. But you also have insulin resistance, and it starts at the muscle cell, and then it will eventually go to the liver. And there's even teenagers who have this because of our lack of quality food, a high abundance of high fructose or fructose in our foods. So even people you would never imagine, college level athletes, are often insulin resistant at the muscle cell, which is, there's a reason for it. We could definitely get into that, but not in this video. So someone that has very little muscle mass, or skinny fat, the muscle is really so beneficial because it really utilizes a lot of glucose. It's where you store glucose, that's called glycogen. So that's stored within the muscle. When you exercise, you actually burn the glycogen out of that muscle. And then when you consume glucose, it doesn't have to go inundate the cell in this large amount. What it actually does will be forced to go back to the muscle cell for storage. It has a place to go. It's easy. It's a simple function. But when you become insulin resistant and you have a lack of muscle mass, you don't really have much to burn it, or you're not exercising, you don't have a lot of muscle to store it. Any glucose that you consume is likely to become a problem. And that's also why low carb and ketogenic diets have their place. So it is really important to understand that if you're someone that's experiencing, or this is your body type, this is the outcome of your lifestyle, that maybe fasting isn't the first approach. It will eventually be an approach, but it's not the first approach that you should take to improving your health, and sure as hell not what you should do for fat loss, because without this muscle mass, you're not going to see, if you're under eating, you're not going to see weight loss. Someone that's obese is definitely going to give up energy that has been stored. But if you're someone that has a low RMR driven by under eating, you are not going to see weight loss. You need to take a different approach. You need to get to building muscle and utilizing the glucose that you do consume, build muscle, have a place to store glucose and glycogen. And then now all of a sudden, it's not inundating the cell all the time. It's going to where it's supposed to. Increase your muscle mass, increase your health span by doing so. And that's really why insulin resistance can be staved off or fixed by resistance training. And everyone jumps onto the treadmill, onto the elliptical, and just burns. But you don't really... That's not going to give you the benefit that you're looking for. You're going about it the wrong way. You have to be lifting weights, and you have to understand that I'm not saying lifting weights to the point that you're going to get bulky, because it's most likely just not going to happen anyways, because it's more genetically based, especially women who have that in their head. You have to understand that most people, if you just lift, depending on the intensity, you don't have to spend a ton of time exercising. So build muscle and have a place for that glucose to go. And after you've achieved that, you've become insulin sensitive through muscle mass. Now we can start implementing different types of fasting or different lengths of fasting, because now you're in a really good place to actually start implementing it. You're not going to further do damage by essentially starving yourself of energy and nutrients. So build that muscle and then get to a place. Now we can start fasting for both the obese and the formerly skinny fat. So the next question is, or topic that I want to go over is, should you fast? Should you exercise while fasted? And I love this one. I utilize this a lot, but it really comes down to the same exact thing. Is this going to be something that is going to work? Because if you're exercising and you're underfed, fasting is only going to make it worse. If you're someone who has built their muscle mass and not dealing with insulin resistance, but they just want to get leaner and create a calorie deficit, and also at the same time increase their health and lifespan, then you should absolutely be exercising fasted. If you exercise in the morning, you're actually you're going to see a huge benefit to exercising with no nutrients, no glucose, because you're going to see a hike in HGH, and that's relevant to protecting the muscle short term. So yes, you should absolutely be exercising fasted if you're overweight or you are someone that has muscle mass and wants to drop some fat. So that one's pretty easy to go over and understand, but just remember that it's really important to your goals. Now, I kind of want to get into the person who shouldn't exercise fasted. And we could get really deep into this and argue some of these points, but in general, the general population or athletes, kind of more specifically who I want to get into, athletes have a very specific amount, type of nutrition that they should be getting, and maybe fasting, unless you're a cardio, an endurance type athlete who wants to get fat adapted, this may be a way to get there. But in general, athletes are going to be someone who are not going to want to fast. It doesn't make sense. If you're constantly training, if you're training a lot, you actually want that food to give you nutrition and help you to maintain, to rebuild, all these different things after the exercise. So food is actually really important to you. You need lots of energy. So if you're someone who is an athlete, and again, that's where it becomes goal specific, is maybe fasting isn't right for you, but you see that it's so popular and you're looking for anything, but it's not right for you. So ask questions if you are someone that is implementing it or wondering about implementing it, but we're not going to get into it any further than this. The type of fasting that you can do, there is a wide variety, and it's really just dictated by the amount of time that you spend fasted. And time restricted is a really big one that's really popular, and for good reason. So time restricted is just really eating within a window of time. So 16 hours of fasting and then 8-hour window to actually eat within. Now again, I love the science behind this, and it definitely should be applied to a lot of people, but it can also backfire against you in certain cases, and I'll kind of explain that. So if you're someone that's kind of battling under eating and you're trying to get more calories, or if you're a male, it's definitely more difficult because you've decreased the amount of time that you can eat within, and if you're not getting all the calories that you need in anyways, then you've kind of done yourself a disservice by making it to where you actually have to eat into a smaller amount of time. And let's be honest, it's not likely that you're going to get all the calories or all the nutrients that you need. So you really just made things more difficult. You probably should have just kept eating throughout the day. Unless you are highly insulin resistant, then that would be different. But for a lot of us that are exercising in a pretty decent place, trying to build muscle mass, don't time restrict your food. Try to pile more food in over more time. It's definitely gonna help you get to your goal much easier than trying to eat in a smaller window. So someone that can actually get their full allotted amount of calories and nutrition, if you can do that within a smaller window, then absolutely, definitely do that. And the reason you're doing that is, again, how fasting works. You're just going 16 hours without glucose. You're giving this large period of time to not having those cells being interrupted by glucose and insulin having to be secreted to get that to go into the cell. You give that a long break and then eat your food within the short period of time, and then you're not getting insulin spikes from the blood sugar rise, and you're able to become insulin sensitive or stay insulin sensitive. So you can do these different size windows by breaking down into 24 hours, how long you can eat. And you don't have to fall into the very common ones, 8, 16, stuff like that. You can create your own custom ones dependent on, am I able to get all of the food that I need to get and not sacrifice my RMR? Because that's what you guys are doing now in a full day, still not getting all the calories you need, and your body's starving itself of nutrients. So you're someone that shouldn't be fasting. If you can't accomplish this in the whole 24 hours, then why the hell are you going to try to do it in 16 hours? It doesn't work. So yes, give your cells a break from insulin and glucose. Fast if it's going to benefit you, if it's realistic and it's something that you're going to be able to do. And in doing so, increase your health span, your lifespan, become insulin sensitive, and stave off all of those potential illnesses that people are seeing. And with COVID being so prevalent right now, that is definitely something that being insulin sensitive is going to help you be more resistant to those type of diseases or viruses or whatever they may be. So time restricted is awesome because it gives you time without glucose and lets the cells become insulin sensitive. But again, you have to be in the right situation, and it has to fit into your goals. Or not only just goals, but your ability to be consistent and precise in the way that you're getting enough food. So again, this is kind of an overview and some general education. There's a lot of different reasons that you should or should not. There's a lot of benefits to this that we didn't go over, but again, these are kind of the most important tips. So this is a starting point. You guys talk to me, let me know what questions you have. I mean, I'll try to help every single person that I can. That's the whole goal behind this. It's not marketing, it's not anything other than me trying to educate the population and try to reverse some of the chronic issues that we see. So keep working on your education, keep listening, keep asking questions. We'll talk to you guys later.